So let me say greetings. Good early morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in UK and Europe and Dubai. Good evening to our friends in India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. And good evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to be here with you all. I hope you're well. Today, I helped liaised in transferring 100,000 baht to Bodh Gaya to help in feeding some hungry families there. We're going to be helping to feed 150 families. There's a lot of difficulty coming from COVID infection, but there is also a lot of difficulty coming from the lockdowns themselves. People not able to work and get an income. So a lot of food shortage, a lot of hunger. So it's nice to be able to make a gesture. Good news is we're going to be able to do that 3 more times, every 3 weeks for the next couple of months. And we already did it 5 times last year. So it's about $30,000 US now that we've been able to share, feeding about 150 families in Bodh Gaya. So for myself, Bodh Gaya, many people know, I've been there and spent about a month and a half, at least 10 times. So for Bodh Gaya, to me, is one of my homes. And I'm sure I know the faces of many of those people who are hungry. So it's nice to help as much as we can. And sometimes it feels like, what's the point? Because it looks like it's going to be ongoing, and the need compared to what we can offer, the need is greater. But I don't know, it just seems like the right thing to do, to help as much as we can while we can. That just seems to be the right thing to do. So as long as people are willing to support it, I will continue to liaise. And another thing I did today was help prepare our annual education scholarship / bursary for every child in the local village. And we decided to give 25% more this year because we know that the price of vegetables has gone down quite a bit. Thailand used to get 50 million tourists a year, and they come here and they eat. So with less tourists, there's a lot less eating. And so the price of produce, and also there's less exporting overseas. So the price of produce came down quite a bit, and it has affected people. So this year we're giving a scholarship, believe it or not, to the 10 newborn babies. I guess we're giving it as a incentive. It's just a nice way to help out the parents, actually. Like if they have 3 or 4 children, if every one of those children gets a bursary, that's very helpful. And in Thailand, the beginning of the school year is in the beginning of May. So it's a time when there's a lot of expenses, books, shoes, all of those things, textbooks, bus fares, all of that. So anyway, it was a nice way to spend my day. The youngest recipient is 2 months, and the oldest recipient is 20 years, one of our university students. So, and thank you. There may be some of you who contributed some funds to those projects. If you did, thank you. Anumodana Sadhu. And if you didn't, Anumodana Sadhu for your good deeds. I'm sure you're doing good things. I haven't announced it within this group because I am aware that a lot of people are struggling in a lot of places, and a lot of people are already helping unemployed friends and family members, and So I haven't announced it, but I told a few people who I think are fairly wealthy who probably haven't been affected too much. So, and the good news is they kindly contributed. So it's you know, in many respects, it's a kind of depressing and challenging time for many people. And one of the ways we can manage potential feelings of despair is finding ways to give. If we can give a little to people who have less, that does give rise to some well-being and joy in our own hearts. There's that sense of, well, at least I'm doing what I can do. And a lovely sense of dignity and well-being comes from that. And we don't need to judge ourselves about how much or how little it is, simply that making the gesture, opening the heart, responding with kindness. I remember Ajahn Jayasaro telling a Jataka story about the past life of the Buddha, when there was a raging fire in a forest, and he was a parrot. The Bodhisattva was a parrot, and the parrot would fly off to the river, take one little beak, one drop of water, rush back to the forest and drop that one drop of water on the fire, and then go back to the stream, get one more drop, and go back and drop another drop on the forest. And the parrot actually died of exhaustion, but died trying to help. He knew what was needed was water, so he dropped a few drops. And we can say it's impractical. On one level it is, but it's a very beautiful way to live a life. And as we know, I'm sure the Bodhisattva had a very auspicious rebirth and got on with cultivating virtue and merit in various different ways. So sometimes these gestures I'm involved in making seem like drops on a raging fire, but we do what we can do. And hopefully it catches on, because if enough people drop their drops, it starts to be buckets, doesn't it? And so I believe we may have some questions, JC.
Ajahn, question number 1. Dear Ajahn, thank you for these meetings, from which I received many benefits. Here is my question. From the outset, the Buddhist teachings of emptiness and non-self seem contradictory to the belief in various deities and bodhisattvas. The way I understand this paradox is that, yes, we are all empty of a permanent, unchanging self. Yes, yet we exist in a form as a consciousness-continuum. And in the same way, deities and bodhisattvas have their own continuum in their forms. This, I think, also relates to the idea of form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Is this the right understanding? Thank you.
So I would say yes. I would say this is a correct understanding. So we can't really sit here with our body made of form and made of 4 elements, our set of 5 khandhas, various sense-based consciousness and a mind and a body, and say that other beings don't exist because the ultimate truth is emptiness, when we ourselves are sitting here with a form, experiencing sense contact. So it is a teaching that can be misunderstood, the teaching on emptiness. And so the way I understand the teaching on emptiness, and I have attended His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary on the Heart Sutra, the main theme of which is emptiness, on several occasions. And His Holiness explains, there is conventional reality. That's the form. Form is emptiness. It doesn't say there is no form. It doesn't say that form doesn't exist, and it doesn't say that form is nothing. What it says is that form is empty. And what is it empty of? That's the question. It's empty of permanence. It's empty of an abiding self that doesn't change. So when talking about emptiness, we're talking about the ultimate nature. Whether a being has realized emptiness or not, their nature is still emptiness. So when you take, for example, a tree, there is no inherent self-existing permanent tree because it came from a seed, it required water, earth, sun, it became a sapling. A sapling is not a tree. It became a small tree, and then it became a big tree. Even as a big tree, it's getting ready to die. There's no solid, unchanging tree. And we look at things, there's a presumption or an assumption that things are kind of stable, but they're not. They're all changing. Even while they're existing, they're in the process of disintegrating. So that's the same with our bodies. Where is the solid, unchanging you in your body? It started with a sperm and an egg. Those things are incredibly small. A couple of cells. And then it became this big thing, millions of cells. And it is aging, and it will die, and it will go back to the four elements. So there's no solid body, no solid unchanging body, but there is a mental continuum. So that mental continuum right now is experiencing the results of past karmas. You come in touch with wisdom teachings, the opportunity to listen to Dhamma because of your past good actions. We're all coming together here, listening to a Dhamma reflection. This is the result of past good actions. Whatever abundance, well-being, comfort you have, it's the result of your past generosity. Whatever challenges we have, illnesses, various things, it's also the result of our past unskillful actions. And we're all experiencing a combination. It's kind of like the karmic soup. All of the wholesome deeds, unwholesome deeds, neutral deeds, thousands of lives. Now we have this current experience, many, many, many different karmas ripening. And we're sowing fresh karmas that will ripen as different experiences. So when it comes to deities or bodhisattvas, in Buddhism, I think she's talking about possibly what we would call the celestial bodhisattvas. So keeping in mind that our Buddha, Gautama Buddha, in his last life before becoming the Buddha, he was a Tushita Deva. So as a Tushita Deva, Shakyamuni, Gautama Bodhisattva, Shakyamuni Bodhisattva, was a celestial bodhisattva in that life. It's very clear in the suttas. The Queen Mother, Mahamaya Devi, dreamt of the white elephant as it descended into the womb. And the Buddha was talking to Ananda about the fact that mindful and fully aware, he descended from Tushita into his mother's womb. This is one of the things that makes a great bodhisattva different to other beings, is that they can move from birth to birth with perfect clarity, whereas most people, there's so much ignorance, and that when they take a rebirth, they forget the past life instantly. But the bodhisattva has this continuum. He was mindful and perfectly aware as he entered the womb. The mother of His Holiness the Dalai Lama explains that before she knew he was the Dalai Lama, she could hear the bodhisattva in her womb reciting mantras, Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. So the great bodhisattvas don't waste that time. They do their practice, they're meditating. They got 9 months. It's probably like, great, I finally get my 9-month retreat, you know? So just as our Buddha was a celestial bodhisattva, and just as I would assume Maitreya is probably a celestial bodhisattva now, because he will be in his final birth in Tushita heaven as well. So for Theravadins who maybe don't want to take on a belief in Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, Samantabhadra, Siddhigarbha, you know, these great bodhisattvas in the Mahayana, if you don't want to take that on, that's fine. But we all do have faith that there were previous Buddhas and future Buddhas. So we as Theravadins, we have faith in Maitreya. And we wouldn't say that Maitreya Bodhisattva doesn't exist. The Bodhisattva, in Theravada we study Paticca Samuppada, dependent co-arising. The dependent co-arising factor for the arising of a Buddha is the Bodhisattva. You don't get the Buddha without the Bodhisattva. And you don't get the Bodhisattva until you get that being, that ordinary being, a billion lives ago, maybe a few billion lives ago, that started to cultivate virtue and built more and more virtue and became heroic and courageous and wanted to help more and more and more beings. So the ordinary being inclining towards goodness is the cause for the arising of the lower level bodhisattva. And the lower level bodhisattva practicing for hundreds of thousands and millions of lives, cultivating virtues and qualities, is what gives rise to the great bodhisattva that is the cause of the Buddha. And the Buddha's, of course, teaching is what gives rise to a great number of arahants, all of whom had to cultivate a great deal of virtue in their past lives as well. So just as our bodhisattva was, just as our Buddha was a bodhisattva, there are bodhisattvas training now. And another way of describing it is, Ajahn Amaro told me this story because he knows Sokni Rinpoche and Chokyi Nyima Rinpoche from the Nyingma tradition. I've also met these venerables, and somebody asked, I think it was Chokyi Nyima Rinpoche, he's based in Kathmandu in Buddhanath. Somebody asked him, is Tara real? Green Tara, is she real? And he answered, she knows she's not real. And someone else asked him, yeah, but is she real? Does she really exist? And then he answered, well, she's as real as you and I. Because we're not real either. We're ultimately empty, just as the deities and the bodhisattvas are. But I remember people might be a bit surprised because Ajahn, so here we have a beautiful Buddha behind us and we have a great arahant, and here we have a bodhisattva. That's part of what I am, who I am, what I teach, my style now. There has to be the Buddha, there has to be the arahant, and there has to be the bodhisattva. That's just part of my karma. Because I love all of these. These are part of my refuge, and I find it enriching, nourishing, holistic. Not everybody does. Some people just want the arahants. That's okay. And whatever you find supportive. Some people just want the bodhisattvas. They don't want those arahants. Yeah, but that's okay too. As long as you're sincere and whatever works for you. So, but people won't realize that for my first 4 or 5 years in this training, I wasn't the slightest bit interested in bodhisattvas or meditation deities. And I was doing vipassana meditation retreats, and I was doing reflective meditations, metta, death reflection, body contemplation. And when I saw books on Mahayana Buddhism, I used to think, I'm not interested in deities. Buddhism isn't about deities. I'm interested in emptiness. I'm interested in nibbana. I don't want any more of this God business. And I meditated more and more and more and more. And I met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I attended his teachings after I'd been a bhikkhu for 3 years. And what I assume happened is old imprints, old practices got constellated, and there arose in me a faith in bodhisattvas and an awareness that they're real as you and I. And I experimented with doing some mantras, and I found that to be a nourishing complement to my Theravada practice. And so basically, if something's helpful, to you, then you can take it on. And but we do have a mental continuum within samsara. That's what will get reborn. And that's what will experience the fruits of good, wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral deeds. And if we don't want to experience birth, old age, sickness, and death, separation from the liked and association with the disliked, then we have to commit to the practices that purify and liberate the mind from the samsaric condition. And we all have that potential to do that. So,
Thank you, Prajan. Dear Ajahn, how do we let go of our attachment to our deceased relatives and friends, especially when we love them very much? Thank you.
good question. Good question. So I think one of the things to recognize is the cause of the suffering. The cause of the suffering, we're going to have a look at this from the ruthless wisdom perspective first, and then we're going to have a look at it from the compassionate and reasonable perspective afterwards. So I think it's important to understand that the reason we miss people once they die was because we were very attached to them while they were alive. We might not see that. We just have a feeling of, I like this person, I love this person's my friend, this person's my mother, this is the person I love. And then if that person dies, all of those moments of loving that person, that was the cause for the sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair when you were separated from what you loved. So it's a difficult thing. You can't fix it with a quick fix, because oftentimes these attachments were cultivated over a long period of time with hundreds of thousands of moments of love. So we need to recognize the power of the attachment, how we created it. So in some respects, the reason I say that first is we have to take responsibility for that. We did that. We loved this person with attachment, clinging. And so when this person left our life, we experience grief because we still have the attachment. We have to bring compassion to that situation. But I also want to challenge a little bit the way we experience and relate to death. Because many people, when a relative or loved one dies, has this feeling of like, they're dead. I love them so much and now they're dead. And we get this weird idea on what is dead. It's like this solid, negative, terrible thing that happened to someone we loved. But of course, what happened is they had one moment of death before their mental continuum went on to whatever was next for them. So that being was never frozen in any permanent dead state. That person went on. And I think it's really helpful to consider this, because you have this feeling of they're gone, they're gone, they're gone, they're gone forever. And they haven't gone anywhere, at least in terms of samsara. They're still in cyclic existence. And if you had a very deep loving connection and you both loved each other very much, it's, I would say, extremely likely that you will be meeting each other again. So on your path to enlightenment, your own path to arahantship or great discipleship or Buddhahood, whatever your path is, you're going to be meeting that person again. So in a way, we just have to be patient. You can say, just be patient. Try to hold this in a multiple lifetimes perspective. You'll be seeing that person again. And if you have a karmic habit of helping each other out, when that person's need help, you're going to turn up somewhere, bob up somewhere in samsara and help them. And there might be a situation where you really need help, and there comes that person again and they help you. And so we need to massage that perception of death and make it less solid. Another thing I'm going to suggest, which is, it's getting into tricky territory here, because I don't want to encourage people. I'm going to suggest that we do something a little bit. But if you do what I'm suggesting a lot, you might become crazy. So I have to so I have to preface what I'm going to say with that. So one of the things that you can do, suppose that there was a place that you used to go together. Maybe it's the beach, or maybe it's a certain restaurant or a certain garden. When you go to those places, you can just talk to them as if they're still there. I'm saying sometimes. You go to the beach and you say, Dad, I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I just wanted to share this moment with you. Isn't the surf great today? Hey, Dad, you remember when we used to go surfing when I was a little boy? Oh, we had so many great times, didn't we, Dad? Now, you don't try to hear an answer. You don't have to hear voices. But what I'm saying is, you're allowed to have your relationship. You can still have moments of that relationship. Maybe it's the anniversary of their death, maybe it's their birthday, maybe it's your birthday. And you just go to that place where you used to go and you talk to them a little bit. And don't delude yourself that they're there. I'm not telling you that they're there. Sometimes they might be. It depends on where the rebirth was. So recently I was doing bricklaying in the new Abbot's Kuti. I don't know if you've noticed, but those lovely bricks behind me, yes, I did lay those bricks. Anyway, I was laying bricks in the Abbot's new Kuti, and I put one the wrong way. Now, then I didn't notice it until I'd done a few more bricks, and then I looked back and this brick was, either it was crooked or it was the wrong way up or something. And I noticed it was the wrong way. And I heard my father's voice as clear as day say, yeah, you put it the wrong bloody way, you Wally. Now, the thing about that word Wally, it's a very Australian word. And I don't think I've heard it for 20 years. And it was a word that my father used to use. And so because I have teachers who can check these things, and my teacher did tell me that my father was born as a low-level angel, an earthbound angel, and he told me that my father does hang around with me at times and does travel with me at times. So I would presume, in having heard his voice say, yeah, you put it the wrong bloody way, you Wally, I expect that he probably was there. And I think he was enjoying the fact that his son was doing some bricklaying, because when my father was building extensions on our houses when I was a teenager, I didn't help him at all. I just watched television and played records. Yes, I'm old enough that when I was a teenager, we played records. And so when I think he saw me getting around to doing some building, he was probably quite proud and probably hanging around a bit. And I did feel that kind of energetic presence. So I'm saying that sometimes if a person has been born as a lower level deva, they might be around at times. And certainly Tanajana Nun has said that my father is. And so we can go to places that were special on special occasions. Many people do that. They go to the graveyard, don't they? Or they go to the ashes and they just have a chat. And I think this is helpful. It's helpful to do sometimes because it allows, you had this relationship of decades or a very passionate relationship for a period of time. And then as far as your perceptions go, your coarse perceptions of hearing and seeing, they're just gone now. And it's traumatic. So we can continue to relate to that person sometimes, have a chat with them, write a letter to them, write a message in a bottle and throw it in the ocean. It's like, sometimes we can do these things if it's therapeutic. In terms of wisdom, we need to contemplate that the consequence of birth is death. Where there is love, there is also suffering. So we have to maintain our well-being. We have to have loving kindness. We have to be functioning. A lot of metta for yourself, a lot of compassion. And then we do have to take that bitter medicine. We do have to have a look at it with kind of brutal honesty. The consequence of birth is death. Where there is love, there is suffering. And what we then have to do is we have to train the love that we have, which is attached and conditional for a few people, and we get around to cultivating a loving kindness, which is more broad and impartial for more beings. Nobody is saying that because where there is love, there is suffering, that you turn off your capacity to love. What we're saying, or what I'm saying, is that you evolve and sublimate your capacity to love so that you develop a lot of loving kindness for a lot more beings, which is more impartial. And then what happens is that even if one that you really love falls away from your life, there's all these other beings that you love. You're not going to feel as empty. Sometimes when it's just a few people that we love and they fall away, it's like the love in our life is gone. But that's because we only loved a few people. If we get serious about our loving kindness cultivation, there's no limit to how many people you can love. You love them evenly, you love them impartially, and then you have a heart which is full of loving kindness. And if one or two of those special people fall away, it's okay. You have billions of others you can still love. So this is a training in making our hearts bigger, our love, evolving our love to be more impartial, more objective, more boundless. And then if you have genuine loving kindness for yourself, when you're feeling abandoned or some feeling of lack, this being left my life and now I feel lonely or I feel abandoned, I'm lacking something, you can fill that heart space with the loving kindness that you have for yourself, because in that moment, you're a being who has suffering. And when we cultivate loving kindness for all beings everywhere, that includes you. When we do metta, we include ourselves. But that heart center, which is full of loving kindness, is the space from which we radiate loving kindness to other beings. So if you're feeling lonely, abandoned, rejected, isolated, fill your own body and mind with loving kindness. If you get really skilled at this, you will actually appreciate spending more and more time alone, and you won't feel lonely because you'll have the wholesome meditation object of loving kindness that you can fill your own life, your own experience with this quality of metta. And you can bring people to mind and radiate loving kindness, and in that moment there's no loneliness. But this kind of evolution requires a committed daily discipline. So we do I do my metta meditation for the first 10 minutes of every sit. And over a period of weeks, months, years, decades, obviously that loving kindness gets more powerful. And I do experience some loneliness and some grief sometimes, but not to the point where it really weighs the mind down. And I can respond to it skillfully with kindness, acknowledging it, but then filling that space with warm, loving, nourishing energy, and then moving past it and radiating the loving kindness to more and more beings. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much, Prajan. Prajan, question 3. Dear Ajahn, how to deal with anxiety, depression, and low body self-esteem? Thank you.
Anxiety, depression, and low body self-image or low body self-esteem. So it's, if a person, there's probably no quick fix, because these habits tend to have built up over time. And so then we have to, basically we're enrolled in a program, and that program is going to help over time, take some time. So your practice of generosity is going to manifest eventually as something that you have a wholesome sense of dignity about. You know that you've been generous, and you know the way that you've been generous if you have been consistently generous for a period of time. So the dana practice will lead to wholesome feelings of self-worth and value and dignity. It's simply the result of being kind and generous. If you're kind and generous for long enough, you respect yourself and you appreciate your goodness. Anxiety, I think keeping our ethical precepts, this is the program that we're enrolled in. If we don't break those precepts, normally what the result is some kind of resilient sense of a healthy type of confidence. You're okay. That's the result of keeping sila. Sometimes if we're practicing dana and we're keeping sila and we still have a lot of anxiety and self-worth issues, that can be the result of things we did in past lives. One of the things that happens in meditation is you come and you sit, and various hindrances and emotions manifest in the mind, and they might not necessarily have something to do with something that occurred that day. I have a lot of experience of that. You never quite know when you come to sit what's going to come up. Sometimes you come to sit, the mind's already a little bit peaceful. After 15 minutes, something kind of blossoms in the mind, which is painful. It's like, where did that come from? Other times you come to sit, there's some restlessness or some tiredness. You don't think you're going to get anywhere, but you're going to do it for its own sake. And after a few minutes, the mind becomes peaceful. Because there's different karmas ripening on the level of mind as well. So sometimes precisely because we have a peaceful mind, some karma might ripen as a painful mental feeling. Because the system is kind of open and sensitive, things can ripen. Also, if we have had a consistent practice where we have discipline, sometimes we come to meditate, we think the mind's a mess, we're not going to get anywhere, but because you have been consistent, you sit, and after a few minutes it comes together. That also happens. It's one of the reasons why I like to encourage a very consistent meditation practice, because you learn a lot about the uncertainty of mind states. You feel like you're not going to be peaceful, but you come to sit, and after a while it's peaceful. You're feeling quite good, you're going to go and have a sit, you think, oh great, this one's going to be easy, you sit, and I was like, wow, where'd that come from? But when you keep it up, you develop a lot of insight. These things arise, stay for some time, and cease of their own nature. And obviously the metta practice. So as my teacher told me as a very young monk, when I had so much despair and so much weariness that I wanted to kill the body because I just wanted out. But because I believed in karma and I didn't think that killing the body would be effective, I basically had enough wisdom to understand that that would make more bad karma and the rebirth would be a more difficult one. It wasn't an option. But I asked Ajahn, what can I do with this? And he said, yes. When we practice, for some people, sensitivity increases before equanimity, and it's patiently enduring with those painful feelings is what creates the equanimity. But one thing that you can do is that you can have loving kindness for yourself. And he recommended 5 to 10 minutes of every sit having loving kindness radiated inwards. And it was extremely helpful. And I wouldn't have thought that it would be very helpful 5 minutes when you're feeling so much despair. And I wouldn't have thought that 5 minutes a couple of times a day would make that much of a difference. Over a period of months, it made a huge difference. And so we really need to commit to those disciplines, developing the Brahma Viharas, because they really do support the cultivation of mindfulness and wisdom. A lot of modern people have a kind of a withholding of loving kindness. Some people even have like a self-loathing habit that they do not want to give metta to themselves. This is very unskillful. We need to challenge it. It's like, actually, we think it's like it's vain or something to have loving kindness for yourself. But actually, there's a big sense of self in someone who hates themselves so much that they don't think they're worthy of loving kindness. There's a lot of conceit in that. It's a negative self-view, a negative self-worth. It's like all beings are worthy of compassion, all beings are worthy of loving kindness, all beings have a potential to have a purified and liberated mind. So who are you to deny that to yourself? Sometimes you need to challenge it. Why are you so special that you get to be hated? You know what? The Buddha had loving kindness for you. The Bodhisattvas are making prayers every day to liberate you from samsara. All of these beings radiating loving kindness to all beings everywhere, including you, and you're closing yourself off from that. It's like sometimes we need to challenge it. When you develop loving kindness for yourself, you also become more receptive to the loving kindness that others have for you. But it takes time. We have to be consistent with our generosity. We have to be consistent with our ethical conduct, consistent with our loving kindness practice, and over time, anxiety gets less, confidence develops, and we have a sense of having an inner refuge. And it might just be moments at first, but those moments get deeper and more frequent. And you have to trust that and keep going. So,
Another question about meditation. Hi Ajahn, while in meditation, start counting 1, 2, 3 breath in and then 1, 3, 2, 1 breath out repeatedly. After a while, the mind is quiet and the counting seems to disappear. And then for a brief moment, the mind came back and started to count again. Is this the correct way? And can I know if that brief moment is the mind gathered and is not interested in outside objects, or I actually doze off, hindrance, sloth, or torpor?
So I would assume that it's probably what we call kanika samadhi, momentary samadhi. If the mind is really with that activity, truly being with the feeling of breath and with the counting, then the mind experiencing some collectedness, some powerful connectedness, but just for a moment. So what happens is it comes inward, and then the counting falls away by itself. So that's the same thing might happen with Buddha. You're practicing breath awareness with Buddha, and at a certain point, the Buddha might fall away by itself, and there's just the awareness of the breath. That's fine. The way you ascertain whether it's sleepiness or concentration is there should there should have been, if it's concentration, kanika samadhi, there should be a heightened sense of lucidity and peace, clarity. And then when you come back, the awareness of the breath and the counting comes back again, the mind feels sharpened. If it was dozing off for a moment, coming out of that experience as a little bit of dazed, where am I? What was I doing? Oh yeah, counting the breath. There's a different quality. One, you'll come out with more clarity, a deeper sense of presence, and mindfully recollect, oh yes, counting the breath, 3, 2, 1. Or you come out like, where am I? What was I doing? Oh yeah, counting. There'll be a fuzziness. So just observe. It's probably the first one, I think, but we'll see.
Thank you, Prajan. Prajan, there's a part 2 of this question. In a few other occasions during my meditation practice for about half an hour or so, I have spasms throughout the body. So I just ignore and continue to watch the breath, but the sensation came intermittently for 2 to 3 times. What was this? Thank you.
So in our ordinary life, we have a way of holding our body and mind through habit. It's normal. There is craving, clinging, attachment, and there are our habits. So there's a certain kind of what you call holding pattern. And nothing wrong with that. But when we come to meditate and we're dropping thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, and thoughts about ourselves and other people, the way we're holding all of that is falling away. And so I think in the process of meditation, there might be times where the energetic body relaxes, or some of those ways of holding get released, and it's normal. And I think the attitude of not paying that much attention to it and just continuing with the main meditation object is the correct attitude. And don't worry about it. And just the energetic body does become, meditators' energetic bodies actually become bigger. Your aura, even if you can see it or not, if you're diligent with your keeping your precepts and meditating, you will be becoming a more radiant being. So your subtle body, your energetic body is expanding, and there may need to be some adjustments. Also, sometimes we may have repressed memories, emotions, feelings in childhood. I think it's very common for children. Children get upset about very little things, and they get very upset. And then there's a lot of emotions. And then they might be in a situation where the mum and dad don't want to hear them cry all day, and mum and dad might just have said, "Shut up already." But for a baby, what happens is like, oh, what do you do with that emotion? You're very, very upset. Now you can't express it. Mum and dad have told you to shut up. It's like, it often gets inside, it gets stuffed down. Because it was like this flaming tantrum. And then dad comes and says, "Stop it!" It's like, it goes down. That's normal. But in the process of meditation, there might be some releasing of things that got repressed. It's part of the human situation. We do suppress and repress things. And in the normal part of the development of meditation, some of those feelings that got repressed and suppressed will have to flow through the mind. And we just allow them to arise and cease. Try not to make a problem out of them. I remember for the first couple of years, my mind would just be about to get peaceful, and then the abdomen area would just tense up involuntarily, and then the mind wouldn't be peaceful anymore. And I had to bring the mindfulness to that area and pay attention. And what happened was, when I relaxed into that area and didn't let the mind do that, some grief came up and had to pass through. So it's like some stuff from childhood. So there was at the time in childhood, it wasn't safe to experience that. But now that I'm in a safe place, and you have to tell the mind, you can let this go now. And some things need to flow through sometimes. So, and then it stops after a period of time. You don't have to keep revisiting the same wound and lamenting and grieving it again and again. You can feel the feeling. You can have the experience of disappointment or grief or fear or whatever it was, rage. It arises, passes through the mind, it ceases. You put it down, you allow the past to be the past. But most meditators have to do some work in this area, just allowing the mind to shed the past. Sometimes it takes a while to flow through, and the residue of the past takes a while to be able to put it down fully. That's okay. So having a patient attitude and just, as this person does, seeing that kind of spasm and then continuing to meditate, not worrying about it too much. Happened 2 or 3 times in one meditation session. I wouldn't worry about it. Probably what will happen is at a certain point it will just stop happening. And but there might be a feeling of, I also remember in the earlier years of my meditation, when I experienced peacefulness, it was in the heart area. And it was a little bit brittle. It was very nice, but it was a little bit brittle and it would kind of get shattered. The peacefulness could get shattered. And what happened as meditation progressed, now when my mind gets peaceful, it's peaceful all around the body and mind. There's this kind of firm peacefulness, and it's not as brittle and it doesn't shatter as easily. So in that experience of the energetic body adjusting, growing, it's part of the process of developing a more resilient and stable peacefulness, I would think. So.
Ajahn, how to tame the mind during meditation? I try to do 30 minutes every day, but thoughts runs everywhere. Will it help if I extend the time so that the mind has time to run first and then come down to enter proper meditation? Thank you.
I would say yes. I would say 40 minutes is 40 minutes is what you need realistically, because the first 20 minutes the mind is, for most people, for the first 20 minutes the mind is putting down the busyness. People have quite busy lives these days, and the first 20 minutes the mind is just putting the past down and restraining itself from running off into the future. And if you're meditating for half an hour, you're just going to get a couple of minutes of some peacefulness, and then it'll be running off into the future. So yeah, you want to give yourself hopefully 15 minutes of peacefulness after that 20 minutes of settling. And then for the last few minutes, the mind will probably start thinking about what it needs to do the rest of the day, or wanting to sleep or whatever. So yes, I know some people are beginning their meditation and the idea of 40 minutes seems too much. I get that, but try to increase slowly. Most of Ajahn Achulo's students, of course, are very diligent and adding 2nd and 3rd sessions per day every day. But there are a few of you who are just beginning. And so for those people, you add 5 minutes. Hello, Don Jai in Chiang Mai. Don Jai in Chiang Mai has started a 10 to 15 minutes meditation practice a day every day. And so we start that, and then we add, once we get used to that, we add 5 more minutes, and we add 5 more minutes. And when we get used to that 20-minute meditation, you might notice that it takes 20 minutes for the mind to get peaceful. And so then you extend it more, make it a half an hour, and learn to enjoy the peaceful minutes after the mind settles down. But it takes a while to establish the half an hour, 45-minute or 1 hour daily practice. We just keep adding 5 minutes whenever we can. So when we see the benefits, so okay, do a bit more. Shivani, do you have something ready for us this week? Hello, Shivani.
Hello, Ajahn.
For those of you who have time, Shivani, which sutta will you be chanting, Shivani?
Ajahn, some part of the Atanatiya Sutta.
That's
It
the
is,
Attanataniya. Is that the 28 Buddhas, is it?
yeah, it's about the Buddhas, the past Buddhas, and the receiving
Excellent.
blessings from them. So this part,
It's a very powerful protection, Attanataniya protection. Excellent. 28
and,
Buddhas.
yeah, and this part that I have selected, actually, they do it in Dhamma Rama. It is especially the Karuna Brahma Vihar. So this is actually the need of the hour. So it was a good thing. So, with your permission, Ajahn.
The floor is yours.
वचसा मनसा चैव वन्दामीति तथागते शयने आसने ठाने गमने चापि सर्वदा सदा सुखी रक्षन्तु बुद्धा सन्ति करातु वं तेहि त्वं रक्षितो सन्तो मुक्तो सर्वभयेन च सब रोग विनिमुक्तो सब संताप विचितो सब वीरमति कंतो निभुतो च तुवं भव ते संसच्चेन शीलेन खन्ति मेत्ताबलेन च तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च पुरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति भूता महीत्तिका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च दक्षिणस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति देवा महीत्तिका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च पश्चिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति नागा महीत्तिका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च उत्तरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति यक्षा महीत्तिका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च पूर्वदिशं धतरट्ठो दक्षिणेन विरुल्हको पश्चिमेन विरूपखो कुबेरो उत्तरं दिशं चत्तारोति महाराजा लोकपालाय सस्सिनो तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च आकाशट्ठा च भूमट्ठा देवानागा महीत्तिका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च सब्बीतियो विवज्जन्तु सर्वरोगो विनश्यतु मा ते भवतवन्तरायो Sukhi Digayuko Bhava, Sukhi Digayuko Bhava, Sukhi Digayuko Bhava.
Beautiful, very peaceful to listen to. I think it will help a lot of people. People need something wholesome to listen to in the background in these trying times, and incline the mind towards meditating or chanting. Sometimes people need something as a kind of a adjustment period, coming back from a stressful situation or hearing some traumatic news, putting something on which helps you relax and feel some well-being. And then you feel like, okay, now I'll go and chant, now I'll go and meditate. So I think, and also when people are dying, you know, sometimes playing something for them is very, very helpful, a huge gift to them to move on peacefully. So there are a lot of people creating masterpieces because they're stuck at home. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And I'm sure there's a lot of great books and great short movies and great albums that are precisely because people were able to focus. Okay, lovely to spend time with all of you.
Thank you, Prajan, for a lovely evening, and Shivani for your chanting as well. And can we say 3 times sadhu for a lovely evening together? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Ajahn.
Good night, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Good night.
Take
Stay
care.
safe. Take care. Stay
Thank you.
safe.
Thank
See you next
See
2
ya.
weeks, yeah? See you next 2 weeks.